Good day and Assalamualaikum. I am Miss Nihaya B. Moni, your presenter for today. So what I am going to impart to you is the managing change and innovation. And inshallah, after discussing or after watching this video, you will be able to learn to contrast the calm waters and white water rapids metaphors of change, describe what managers can change in organizations, explain why people are likely to resist change, and list the techniques for reducing resistance to change, describe the situational factors and facilitate cultural change, and also explain how processes reengineering is related to change, and you will also be able to differentiate between creativity and innovation, and lastly you will able to explain how organizations can stimulate and nurture innovation. Alright, so before anything else, or we proceed to the other discussion, we should first unlock the term change. So when you hear the word change, what comes to your mind? Okay, so we all know that change is the only constant in this world. Okay, so hindi talaga natin may ibsan or may iwasan na magkaroon ng changes, no? So if it weren't for organizational change, that is, any alterations in people, structure, or technology, the manager's job would be relatively easy. So planning would be simple because tomorrow would be no different from today. So the issue of effective organizational design would also be solved because the environment would be free from uncertainty and there would be no need to adapt. So similarly, decision making would be dramatically streamlined because the outcome of each alternative could be predicted with almost certain accuracy. So to sum up, change is the alteration in people, structure, or technology. Change is an organizational reality. It is inevitable, and change is managing an integral part of every manager's job, complicates the job of the managers. Okay, so ito yung nagpapabigay ng challenges sa ating mga managers. So, there are forces for change, okay? May mga iba't ibang forces kung bakit kinakailangan ng isang organization ng mag-adapt ng change, okay? So, let's briefly look at the factors that can create the need for change. So first, we have the external forces. The external forces that create the need for change come from the various sources. So in recent years, we have here the following. The marketplace. Okay, so the marketplace has affected firms such as, for example, the Dell computer, the one na ginagamit ng mga English ones, yung Dell computer, as a competition from Gateway, Apple, and Toshiba. So it intensified in the battle for consumers' computer purchases. So these companies must constantly adapt to changing consumer desires as they developed new pieces and improve marketing strategies. So marketplace, no, they adapt to changing consumer desire. Another factor or another force na nabibigay ng change or na the-trigger ng change is yung governmental laws and regulations. So, in the governmental laws and regulations, they are frequent impetus for change. For example, the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act required thousands of organizations, no? They are for-profit and not-profit firms, to reconfigure restrooms, add ramps, widen the doorways, and take other actions to improve accommodations for persons with disabilities. And a new law that give electronic signatures the same legal weight as the pen and ink signatures is bringing changes in many organizational areas. So kapag yun yung binigay ng isang ng government, no, bilang isang regulation or law, so wala talagang choice ng isang organization but to adapt. Right? So another what we call this one, another force that we have here is the technology. So the technology, it also creates the need for change. Okay, as you can observe talaga yung technology nagkakaroon talaga ng innovation, nagkakaroon ng changes at agad-agad nagkakaroon ng mga updates nito. So technology, for example, there is a technological improvements in expensive diagnostic equipment that have created significant economies of scale for hospitals and medical centers. So assembly line technology in other industries is changing dramatically as organizations replace human labor with robots. Even in the greeting card industry, the electronic mail and the internet have dramatically changed the way that people send greeting cards. So dati traditional way, no? Pero as time goes by, nagkakaroon ng changes sa ating technology. Mas napapadali nito yung ating gawain. Okay? So another one is the labor market or the fluctuation in labor markets. So this also forces managers to change. Okay, so for instance, the demand for web page designers and website managers. So it made it necessary for organizations that need those kind of employees to change their human resource management activities to attract and retain skilled employees in the areas of the greatest need. Okay, so the HRM activities must change to attract and retain skilled employees in the areas of the greatest need. And lastly, last force for change, no, in the external perspective is the economic changes. So of course, it affects almost all organizations. So for instance, the global recessionary pressures force organizations to become more cost efficient. So but even in a strong economy, uncertainties about interest rates, federal budget deficits, and currency exchange rates create conditions that may force organizations to change. Okay, so those are the external forces for change. Now let's down to the internal forces. No, internal forces, in addition to the external forces that we just described, internal forces also can stimulate the need for change. So these internal forces tend to originate primarily from the internal operations of the organization or from the impact of external changes. Okay, so the originate from the the internal forces is the originate from the operation of the organization. Within the organization, forces may include strategy, workforce, new equipment, or new employee attitudes. So a redefinition or modification of an organization's strategy often introduces a host of changes. Okay, so for instance, in the internal change or internal force. No? For instance, when the Gordon Bithon took over as the CEO of the bankrupt Continental Airlines, he turned it into a well-run and profitable company with extremely committed employees by orchestrating a series of well-planned and dramatic strategy changes. Okay, so in addition, an organization's workforce is rarely static. Okay, so its composition changes in terms of age, education, ethnic background, sex, and so forth. So in a stable organization with a large pool of seasoned executives, for instance, there might be a need to restructure jobs in order to retain younger managers at lower ranks. Okay, so the compensation and benefit system might also need to be adapted to reflect the needs of an older workforce. So the introduction of the new equipment represents another internal force for change. Employees may have their job redesigned, need to undergo training on how to operate the new equipment, or be required to establish new interaction patterns within their work group. So employee attitudes such as increased job dissatisfaction may lead to increased absenteeism, more voluntary resignations, and even labor strikes. So such events will in turn often lead to changes in management policies and practices. So nagkakaroon talaga ng changes within the organization para ma-address itong iba't ibang problems na na-distinguish natin, okay, within the organization. Now, let's down to the manager as a change agent. So, lahat ng tao na ang role niya is maging head, no? Para implement ang change is tinatawag natin na change agent. So, manager as a change agent, no, is actually the catalyst and assume the responsibility for change. Okay, so changes within an organization need a catalyst. So the people who act as a catalyst and assume the responsibility for managing the change process are called the change agent. Okay, so any manager can be a change agent. So as we discussed, the information on change, we assume that it is initiated and coordinated by a manager within the organization. But however, the change agent could be a non-manager. So, hindi porket sinabi natin change agent is manager lang siya. So, pwede rin siyang hindi manager yung ating change agent, no? So long as siya ay nagiging catalyst at the same time nag-assume ng responsibility for change, no? So, for example, doon sa non-manager, a change specialist from the human resources department or even an outside consultant whose expertise is in change implementation. So for the major system-wide changes, an organization will often hire outside consultants to provide advice and assistance. Because they are from the outside, they can offer an objective perspective that insiders may lack. However, outside consultants are usually at disadvantage because they have an extremely limited understanding. Yes, they have extremely limited understanding of the organization's history, culture, operating procedures, and people. Now, in contrast, internal managers who act as change agents may be more thoughtful and possibly overcautious because they must live with the consequences of their decisions. Okay? So, alright, let's now down to the two views of the change process. Okay, so we can use two very different metaphors to describe the change process. One metaphor mentions the organization as a large ship crossing calm sea. Okay, so the ship's captain and crew know exactly where they are going because they have made the trip many times before. So change comes in the form of an occasional storm, a brief distraction in an otherwise calm and predictable trip. So on the other metaphor, the organization is seen as a small raft navigating a raging river with uninterrupted whitewater rapids. Okay, so aboard the raft are half a dozen people who have never worked together before, who are totally unfamiliar with the river, who are unsure of their eventual destination, and who, as if things weren't bad enough, are traveling at night. So, we have here the in the whitewater rapids metaphor, change is a natural state and managing change is a continual process. Okay, so these two metaphors present very different approaches to understanding and responding to change. Now let's take a closer look at each one. First, we have here the calm water metaphor. So the calm water metaphor, up until the late 1980s, the calm water metaphor was fairly descriptive of the situation that managers faced. Okay, it is best illustrated by Kurt Lewin's three-step description of change process. So, according to Kurt Lewin, a successful change can be planned and requires unfreezing the status quo, changing to a new state, and refreezing to make the change permanent. So the status quo can be considered an equilibrium state. To move from this equilibrium, unfreezing is necessary. Okay, so what is unfreezing? Unfreezing can be thought as preparing for the need change. No, this is the preparation stage. It can be achieved by increasing the driving forces, which are here the driving forces are the behavior away from the status quo. Okay, so the drive change and the direct behavior away from the status quo, known as the driving forces, by decreasing the restraining forces, which are forces that resist yung ating restraining forces. These are the forces that resist change and push behavior toward the status quo, or by combining the two approaches. So once unfreezing, pag na-unfreeze na natin yung kinagawian natin, yung status quo within the organization, so again, once unfreezing has been accomplished, the change itself can be implemented. So pwede na natin i-implement yung change. So doon na papasok yung changing process. So however, Merely introducing change doesn't ensure that the change will take hold. So the new situation needs to be refrozen so that it can be sustained over time. So pag na-unfreeze na natin, after unfreezing, you can now proceed to the changing process. Then after changing na or implementing the changes that you would like to implement, then that's the time that you have to refreeze, no? Because refreezing or refrozen can help to sustain the over time the change that you would like to implement. So unless this last step, no, the refrozen is done, there's a strong chance that the change will be short-lived as employees revert back to the old equilibrium state. So that is the old ways of doing things. The objective of refreezing then is to stabilize the new situation by reinforcing the new behaviors. Alright? So again, the Lewin's three-step model, we have the unfreezing, the changing, and the refreezing. So, ito siya. This is the illustration of the change process. Just imagine guys, kapag bumili ka ng ice candy at hindi mo nagustuhan yung ingredient. So before mo ma-change yung ingredients, you have to unfreeze, no? You have to unfreeze the ice candy kasi naka-frozen yun eh. After mo ma-unfreeze, pwede mo na siyang i-stir, pwede mo nang dagdagan or bawasan anything that you would like to change on that particular ice candy. So, pag na-change mo na, no, na-implement mo na yung change na gusto mo, the ingredients or whatsoever, then that's the time na pwede mo na siyang i-refreeze ulit. So, pag na-refreeze mo na, then that's the time na pwede mo, satisfied ka na doon sa changes na in-implement mo doon. So just like this, no, the change process, you have to unfreeze, change, and refreeze. Alright, so we also have here, by the way, this calm water view, no, in additional information, this calm water view no longer appropriately describe the kind of environment that manager in today's organization face. Hindi na siya masyadong ginagamit ng mga manager itong approach na ito. So later on, you will know more about why. So let's now down to the second view of the change process. We have the white water rapids metaphor. So to get a feeling muna, no, before we discuss further the white water rapids metaphor, we have to internalize this view. So to get a feeling of what managing change might be like when you have to continually maneuver in uninterrupted rapids, consider the attending a college that had a rule stating that all exams are unannounced. So you have to be ready for tests at any time. So to succeed in this college environment, you would have to be incredibly flexible and able to respond quickly to changing conditions. So students who were overly structured or slow to respond or uncomfortable with change would not survive. So yan yung concept ng whitewater rapids metaphor type of environment. So is this whitewater rapids metaphor an exaggeration? I think no. Although you would expect this type of chaotic and dynamic environment in a high-tech industries, even organizations in non-high-tech industries are faced with constant change. So again, the whitewater rapids metaphor, it is consistent with uncertain and dynamic environment, consistent with a world increasingly dominated by information, ideas, and knowledge. Also, managers must continually maneuver in uninterrupted rapids. No? So in here, managers face constant change in this type of environment. So today, managers must be ready to efficiently and effectively manage the changes facing their organization on their work areas. So para mas maintindihan natin, take the case of the Converse Incorporation. You know Converse, an athletic shoe manufacturer based in Massachusetts. We are all familiar with this. Maybe some of you are wearing this brand of shoes. So in the intensely competitive athletic shoe business, a company has to be prepared for any possibility. So the kids, as a major target market of the Converse Incorporation, are no longer content with the new sneaker styles every season. So they want new and unique styles more often. And competition is hot. Thus, industry leaders like Adidas, Reebok, Nike keep the pressure on. So managers at Converse knew that if they wanted to remain in business and be successful, they had to adapt change, or they had to change. So they decided on a series of changes, like reviving the once popular Chuck Taylor line of canvas basketball shoes, signing new spokespersons, making shoes for mountain biking and skateboarding, and implementing a company-wide quality management program. So these type of significant organizational changes were essential for Converse to survive, to survive the whitewater rapids environment in which it operates. Alright, so we also have here the three categories of change. We have the three categories of change. Okay, so changing structure include any alteration in authority relations, coordination mechanisms, the degree of centralization, the job redesign, or similar structure variables. Okay, so changing technology encompasses modification in the way work is performed or the methods and equipment that are used. So changing people refers to changes in employee attitudes, expectation, perceptions, and behavior. So those are the three categories of changes. Again, the structure, technology, and the people. In initiating change, there are types of changes. So before that, in initiating change, this is wherein you are going to identify what organizational areas might need to be changed, and then putting the change process in motion and managing employee resistance to change. That's the initiation of change. Now let's down to the types of change. We have here the first type of change, the changing of structure. So changing structure, this is the organization's formal design, decentralization, degree of formalization, and the work specialization. So managers' organizing responsibilities include such activities as choosing the organization's formal design, allocating authority, and determining the degree of formalization, as what I have said kanina. So once those structural decisions have been made, however, they aren't final. So changing conditions or changing strategies bring about the need to make changes in structure. So as a result, the manager in his or her role as change agent might need to modify the structure. So structural components and structural design. So another type of change, aside from the structure, is the changing in technology. So in changing technology, this is the modification in the way work is performed, the alteration in the methods and equipments used. So the managers can also change the technology that used to convert inputs into outputs. So most early studies in management, such as the work of Taylor and Gilbreth, if you can still remember, that dealt with the efforts aimed at technological change. So if you recall, scientific management that sought to implement changes that would increase production efficiency based on time and motion studies. So today, major technological changes usually involve the introduction of new equipment, tools, or work methods, like the automation and computerization. So automation, ito yung replaces tasks done by people with machines. Then computerization is the recent visible changes in information systems. So we are all familiar with the information system. All organizations are actually adopting this. For example, in Mindanao State University, sa ating university, all our informations, from the time na nag-enroll tayo until we graduated and enroll for the graduate studies, lahat ng information natin is one click lang because they are all computerized, by the help of the information system. So yan sila, lahat ng information natin na naka-intact sa information system ay under computerization. So lahat ng nagkakaroon ng changes. Alright, so the last type of change is the changing people. So in changing people, this is the changes in employee attitudes, as I have said kanina, expectation, perception, and the behavior. So one of the strategy or techniques or program that we are using to change people is yung tinatawag natin na OD, or the organizational development. Okay, so OD or organizational development, these are techniques or programs to change people and the nature and the quality of interpersonal work relationships. It is actually intended to help individuals and groups work together more effectively. So, ayan siya. So, these are the tactics or methods that we have in the OD or the in the organizational development techniques. Now, first is we have sensitivity training. This is a method of changing behavior through unstructured group interaction. Ito yung nagkakaroon kayo ng group activity, no, kung saan ilalabas natin yung pagiging sensitive natin as an individual. So by that, mas na-understand natin yung self natin, at the same time yung bawat isa within the organization. That is the sensitivity training. We also have the team building. Team building, these are the activities, no, that help the team member learn how each member thinks and works. So usually lahat ng mga organization, no, ito yung pinaka-paborito nilang type of technique ng OD, yung team building. Nakakarating sila sa Cagayan or outside the locality. The next one is the intergroup development. This is the changing the attitudes, the stereotypes, and the perception that work groups have about each other. And we also have here the process consultation. This is an outside consultant that helps the manager understand how interpersonal processes are affecting the way work is being done. And lastly, we have the last technique of OD that we have here is the survey feedback. This is a technique for assessing attitudes and perceptions, identifying discrepancies in this, and resolving the differences by using survey information in feedback groups. Alright? So, we also have here the dealing with resistance to change. So, resistance to change, actually hindi siya negative. May positive impact din yung resistance to change kasi nagkakaroon ng signal ang mga manager natin na i-evaluate ulit yung change na nais nilang i-implement, because of this resistance to change. So now let's talk about why people resist to change and how are we going to deal with it. So change can be a threat to people in an organization. So organizations can build up inertia that motivates people to resist changing their status quo even though change might be beneficial. So why do people resist change and what can be done to minimize their resistance? So first, why, kung bakit nagre-resist yung mga employee or yung mga workers or the people within an organization. First is the reason change replaces the known with ambiguity and uncertainty. So, for example, when quality control methods based on sophisticated statistical models are introduced into manufacturing plants, many quality control inspectors have to learn the new method. So some inspectors may fear that they will be unable to do so and may therefore develop a negative attitude toward the change or behave poorly if required to use methods. Next is change threatens investments in the status quo. So here in the second cause of resistance, it is the fear of losing something already possessed. So change threatens the investment you have already made in the status quo. The more that people have invested in the current system, the more they resist change. Why? Because they fear the loss of status, money, authority, friendship, personal convenience, or other benefits that they value. So this helps explain why older workers tend to resist change more than younger workers, because older employees have generally invested more in the current system and thus have more to lose by changing. And also, the last reason why people resist change is that they believe that change is incompatible with the goals and interests of the organization. So, an employee who believes that a new job procedure proposed by a change agent will reduce product quality or productivity that can be expected to resist the change. So, if the employee expresses his or her resistance positively, perhaps by directly and clearly expressing it to the change agent along with substantiation, this type of resistance can be beneficial to the organization. Now, the next topic is the techniques for reducing resistance. After knowing why people or the workers within the organization resist to change, let's now also tackle paano or what are the techniques para ma-reduce the resistance, for reducing resistance. So there are actually variety of action available to managers to deal with dysfunctional resistance. So first here, if you could see, first technique is the education and communication. No, so education and communication can lessen the resistance of change. Communicate with employees to help them see the logic of change. Educate employees through one-on-one discussion, memos, group meetings, or reports. It is also appropriate if source of resistance is either poor communication or misinformation. Thus, must be mutual trust and credibility between manager and employees. We also have here the participation, wherein it allows those who oppose a change to participate in the decision. We also have the involvement, no? The facilitation and support, or the involvement. Kasi yung involvement can reduce resistance, obtain commitment to seeing change succeed, and increase quality to change decision. That's under the participation. The next one is the facilitation and support. These provide supportive efforts such as employee counseling or therapy, new skills training, or short paid leave of absence. No, it can be a time-consuming and expensive, this type of technique in lessening the resistance to change. Next is the negotiation. This exchange something of value to reduce resistance. It may be necessary when resistance comes from the powerful source. And we also have the manipulation and cooptation. This is, it attempts to influence, such as twisting or distorting the facts, withholding damaging information, or creating false rumors. So, pwede mong manipulahin ang information for the sake lamang na mag-adapt ang ating mga employees within the organization doon sa nais mong i-implement na change. That is under the manipulation and cooptation. We also have the last technique, the coercion. So kapag ayaw na talaga ng mga employee or the workers within the organization na mag-adapt ng change, ito na ang pinaka intense na technique na maaaring gamitin ng ating mga change agent, the coercion. So this is using direct threats or force. This is inexpensive and easy way to get support. No? Pwedeng sabihin mo na pwede kang tanggalin sa trabaho kung ayaw mo mag-adapt ng change or kung ayaw mo ihalubilo ang sarili mo sa ating organization. So that is coercion, no? Sapilitan. Alright, so we also have here the contemporary issues in managing change. First is the changing organizational culture. This is the fact that organization culture is made up of relatively stable and permanent characteristics that tends to make that culture is very resistant to change. So a culture takes a long time to form, and once established, it tends to become entrenched. Strong culture are particularly resistant to change because employees have become so committed to them. So understanding the situational factors makes cultural change more likely to be dramatic. Crisis occurs, leadership changes hands, organization is young and small, and culture also is weak. Now, so how can cultural change be accomplished? Now we ask the question, if conditions are right, how do managers go about changing culture? The challenge is to show the ineffectiveness of the current culture, implement the new ways of doing things, and reinforce those new values. So no single action is likely to have the impact necessary to change something that's so ingrained and highly valued. So thus, there needs to be a comprehensive and coordinated strategy for managing cultural change. Okay, so unpace the current culture, implement new ways of doing things, reinforce those new values. And change, if it comes, is likely to be slow. Protect against any return to old familiar practices and traditions. So these are the road to cultural change. We also have here the continuous quality improvement program and the process reengineering. So we know that quality management is important to managers since having quality products and services is essential to organizational success in today's global economy. So achieving desired levels of quality involves making changes in the way people work. Managers can make those changes either by using continuous quality improvement programs or by using more radical process reengineering approach. So we have here the ano ba yung pinagkaiba sa continuous quality improvement programs. It is continuous, small, incremental changes, fix and improve current work activities, and rely on participative decision making from the bottom levels. While in the process reengineering, there is a dramatic shift in the way an organization that does its work and begins with a redesign of work, like define the customer needs, design work processes to best meet those needs, and requires participation from managers and workers. So here is the illustration, the summary illustration of the differences of the continuous quality improvement and re-engineering. You can just simply read it. Now let's now down to the stimulating innovation. So there is a differences between creativity and innovation. Okay, creativity refers to the ability to combine ideas in a unique way or to make unusual associations between ideas. So an organization that stimulates creativity develops unique ways to work or novel solutions to problems, while innovation is the process of taking a creative idea and turning it into a useful product, service, or work method. So thus, the innovative organization is characterized by its ability to channel creativity, from creativity into useful outcomes. So when managers talk about changing an organization to make it more creative, they usually mean that they want to stimulate and nurture innovation. So example, we have the Sony, the 3M, and the Intel. They are aptly described as innovative organization because they take novel ideas and turn them into profitable products and work methods. Alright. So again, here we have the inputs, the transformation, and the outputs. So among input, we have the creative individuals for you to stimulate and nurture innovation. Ang inputs mo, you have to kailangan may creative individuals sa organization or groups or organization. Then transformation, wherein the creative process and creative situation occurs, then that's the time that you will have the creative products or services as an output. Herewith, we also have the stimulating and nurturing innovations. These must focus on inputs. The one that we have tackled a while ago, the inputs, in stimulating and nurturing innovation, the creative people and groups within the organization. So this requires appropriate environment. So we have here the three variables. We've identified 3 sets of variables that have been found to stimulate innovation. First, we have the organization structure or the structural variable, the culture or cultural variable, and the human resource practices or the people or human variable. So first, we have the structural variables. This is an organic design, plentiful resources, and frequent inter-unit communications. So the 3M organization, as an example of an organization, for instance, is a highly decentralized and takes on many of the characteristics of small organic organizations. So the company also has the deep pockets needed to support its policy of allowing scientists and engineers to use up to 15% of their time to projects of their own choosing. We also have the cultural variable. The cultural variable encourage experimentation. This encourages the experimentation, reward success in failures, and celebrate mistakes. So again, this is an innovative organizations tend to have similar cultures. They encourage experimentation, reward both success and failures, and celebrate mistakes. And the last variable that we have is the human resource variables. So within the human resource category, we find that innovative organization actively promote the training and development of their members so that their knowledge remains current, offer their employee high job security to reduce the fear of getting fired for making mistakes, and encourage the individuals to become champions of change. So the idea champions actively and enthusiastically support new ideas, build support, overcome resistance, and ensure that innovation are implemented. So idea champions, ito yung mga tao na into innovations. They are actively and enthusiastically support new ideas, build support, overcome resistance, and ensure that innovations are implemented. Okay, so again, this just to recap, the human resource variables, these promote training and development of employees. These offer a high job security. It encourages individuals to become idea champions, no? Be self-confident, persistent, risk-taking, and energize others with visions of innovation. So these three variables that we have discussed will serve as the stimulants, no? They stimulate and nurture the innovation within the organization. So I think that's all for my discussion. I hope you guys have learned something. Okay, so shukran. By the way, all slides and informations are belong to the rightful owner. No copyright and infringement intended.